get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies infested hen house.
and at the same time, it seemed like the most interesting part was their audience seemed to be on my side.
Yes,
to be. If you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Host.
You think it's deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on, for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked, and you went on stage with it, and it's nothing.
They walked in calm. Joe Rogan and Coleman Hughes. 2 voices, no noise. But what happened next? No one was ready. It started like a quick fix, then turned into a full-blown flood of logic. No yelling, no insults, just cold, clean takedowns. The hosts blinking, stunned, like someone hit pause on their script. Online, chaos, memes, tweets, reactions, fans screaming. They destroyed the View. It was quiet, too quiet. But that silence spoke louder than words. They didn't raise voices. They raised questions. And now?
Did you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail. You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it, because it's so
on TV.
crazy.
She said
on television.
Let's look at a scenario where the Supreme Court says, yes, he has all those rights. He is immune from everything. Yeah. You know what Joe Biden could do since he is presently president?
What?
Whoa. He could throw every Republican in jail.
While the View hosts clutched coffee mugs and staged teary-eyed chaos, something brutal was happening far from that table. Joe Rogan and Coleman Hughes weren't even in the room, but they dismantled them from miles away. No yelling. No theatrics, just cold-blooded precision. It was the intellectual version of a sniper shot, 3 time zones out. Direct hit. Not a scream, not a sigh, just logic, launched like a heat-seeking missile from the podcast realm. And the scariest part?
Strange show, but it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch them.
It's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Well, they're just, it's interesting, because I think Sunny's very intelligent, but she's ideologically captured.
Right.
That's sort of. I think the other ones. There's a couple of the other ones. Don't have to name any names. Are just very dull-minded. But I think Sunny's not one of them. I think she's smart but captured.
Sure. I think she came into it with an agenda.
Of course.
Let's rewind the tape, because this wasn't random. It was a trigger waiting to explode. The View lit the match. Their usual midday meltdown turned into a chaotic rant fest. Politics, culture, race, nothing was off limits. Delivered. With all the subtlety of an air horn at a funeral. Then came the shade. Not so subtle shots at anti-woke men. And just like that, Twitter erupted. Guess whose name started trending? Joe Rogan, Coleman Hughes. 2 minds the internet now. Calls.
Saw you on The View.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been overwhelming my past couple days.
Yeah, is that annoying?
No.
No?
No, I mean, it's just, when I was on there, I really had no idea how it was going to land with the audience. So I just went in there, did my thing. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know who Sunny Hostin was. I actually still really don't know. So I wasn't expecting necessarily for her to kind of try to ambush me in that way and attack my character.
So, picture this. Rogan's probably lifting kettlebells with one hand, recording a podcast with the other. Coleman, ironing a shirt while casually unpacking centuries of political theory. Then, boom, they pause. Just long enough to fire. Back at the circus known as The View. And it wasn't rage. It wasn't loud. It was worse. It was calm. Joe went first, because of course he did. No screaming, no meltdown, just that terrifyingly measured tone.
I'm being honest with you, because I want to be. believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
He's not a Republican.
So how do you...
He's
how-
never voted
well,
for a Republican.
You've said that you're a conservative.
No,
You-
no. I don't think I've been co-opted by anyone. I've only voted twice, both for Democrats. Although I'm an independent, I would vote for a Republican, probably a non-Trump Republican if they were compelling. I don't think there's any evidence I've been co-opted by anyone, and I think that that's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topics rather than make it about me.
It wasn't loud, it wasn't messy, but it was brutal. Joe Rogan dropped a calm bomb so icy it made the internet shiver. That eerie kind of calm. The kind that makes enemies sweat bullets. He didn't rant. He dismantled. Calling The View a strange mix of soap opera energy and a chaotic improv class allergic to truth. They weren't discussing. They were performing. For claps, for clicks, for Twitter dopamine. Then came Coleman Hughes. Cooler than a glacier in sunglasses. Joe looked fired up compared to him. No sarcasm, no spice. Just cold, clinical facts, data, graphs, stats that screamed, "This is what logic looks like." And it hit like a silent earthquake. He called out The View's shallow takes on race and politics, like trying to fill a pool with a teaspoon. Recycled thoughts wrapped in performative outrage. But here's the plot twist. They never even showed. Up from their own platforms, they torched the whole narrative. It was like winning a boss fight, without stepping on the battlefield.
With
It's
no
not about you,
evidence
but
that I've
I
been
just
co-opted.
want to give you the opportunity to respond to the
I appreciate it.
the criticism.
I appreciate being co-opted by anyone. I have an independent podcast. I work for CNN as an analyst. I write for the Free Press. I'm independent in all of these endeavors, and no one is paying me to say what I'm saying. I'm saying it because I feel it.
Joe Rogan, who believes in dragons. I checked it. He
believes in dragons?
He believes in dragons.
Joe, what this is.
Behar was trying to say that I believe in dragons.
Wait, what is this? I just
She
heard
said,
about it.
I checked it. And the lady goes, did you double check it? She goes, I checked it. He believes in dragons.
Should be like
You think they live
Sasquatch,
alongside of
bitch.
people?
Wait,
This is from a wildlife biologist who came away.
Joe didn't just disagree with The View, he exposed it. Not because he was hurt, but because the hypocrisy was just too loud to ignore. He said what many were afraid to. The View has turned challenging ideas into a public crime. According to him, they've mastered the art of twisting logic into violence and disagreement into disrespect. Every conversation becomes a battlefield, where facts are the enemy. And when you repeat that enough times, you get a table of millionaires crying persecution over a guy with a mic and a functioning brain. But then Coleman Hughes stepped in. No yelling, no theatrics, just a whiteboard and a warning. He broke it down cold. The View doesn't run on truth. It runs on chaos. It feeds off conflict, not conversation. It doesn't want clarity. It wants villains. And guess what? Joe and Coleman are perfect for the part. Smart, calm, unshakable, the worst possible threat to a show built on emotional whiplash and verbal food fights. Of course, The View didn't stay quiet. One host, whose name rhymes with whose, threw vague shade in a later episode. Something about toxic men with microphones, accusing them of fueling a patriarchal podcast complex. Which is wild, considering The View is basically a podcast with Botox, camera angles, and an audience trained to clap like seals every time someone misuses the word oppression.
That the anti-racism movement, that is just another form of racism, and you even say it has a lot in common with white supremacy. How can you compare those two things?
They both view your race as extremely significant part of who you are. Neo-racists like Rob D'Angelo, they say that to be white is to be ignorant. Well, this is a racial stereotype, and I want to call a spade and say this is not the style of anti-racism we have to be teaching our kids. We should be teaching them that your race is not a significant feature of who you are. Who you are is your character, your value, and your skin color doesn't say anything about that.
But here's where it turns from cringe to comical chaos. Instead of clapping back with facts, The View did what it does best. They slipped into full-blown theatrical victim mode. Suddenly, they were the ones under attack. Not by name, of course. Rogan and Hughes didn't even bother with that. But even their silence was too loud for the fragile egos at that table. Because nothing rattles The View more than being ignored. It's like setting off a fire alarm during guided meditation. And their response, if you can even call it that, wasn't a counterpoint. It was a performance. They danced around the real criticism like it was a lit stove, spitting out every buzzword in the playbook. Privilege, misinformation, fragile masculinity. Basically, they hit bingo on the card of intellectual laziness. Meanwhile, Rogan and Hughes had already moved on, exposing actual misinformation, hosting voices who can pronounce epistemology without needing a teleprompter. Joe didn't even get mad. He just chuckled. A quiet, devastating laugh that screamed, "Oh, honey, you're not ready." And Coleman, he probably opened Excel, highlighted The View's logical failures, and color-coded them for fun. This wasn't a debate. It was a full-blown audit. And The View failed. The irony, a show that claims to amplify strong, diverse female voices can't handle strong, diverse male voices unless they're scripted, neutered, and pre-approved for Outrage. They say they want diversity, but only if it asks 0 questions.
That show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in. You know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her. And, you know, they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's just, it's a bizarre show.
So we had 8 minutes, and America's approach to race, pretty big topic, pretty important topic.
I think the way you,
So-
before you start, I think the way you described it is,
Now picture this. You're getting absolutely roasted. Not by someone shouting across the table, but by 2 men who didn't even show up to your meltdown. It's like showing up to a duel in full armor, only to realize your opponent just mailed in a thesis and still won. You can't throw fists at facts, but that didn't stop The View from trying. Their clapback wasn't even in the same league. It was like trying to beat a chess grandmaster with a stack of Uno cards, and the internet, oh, it saw everything. Twitter erupted. Memes rained from the sky like confetti at a scandal parade. One viral post had Rogan photoshopped as Gandalf, whispering logic into a horde of Hobbit hosts mid-scream. Another, Coleman Hughes, stone-faced, reading How to Win Arguments Without Talking to Anyone from The View. But this wasn't just comedy. This wasn't trolling. This was a reckoning. Joe and Coleman weren't throwing random punches. They were sending a chilling message, one that could crack the foundation of daytime TV. Because here's the dark truth. Rogan believes shows like The View survive on one thing: rage, a constant loop of outrage. Engineered to keep you angry, addicted, and distracted. They don't just use controversy, they manufacture it. Outrage isn't a byproduct. It's their business model. So now the question isn't just about one show. It's bigger, deeper.
You know, if you average out The View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
you don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Hostin's
You think it's
dumb.
deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on, for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb. But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked, and you went on stage with it, and it's nothing.
Forget the facts. Forget the nuance. Just light the match and watch the outrage burn. That's the formula. That's what The View has turned into. A daily ritual of rage disguised as progress. They scream. They shout. They act like solving the world's problems. Just takes louder voices. But Joe Rogan? He's not playing that game. He's the guy who walks into the fire with a calm voice and a full sentence. While they're throwing verbal Molotovs, he's bringing questions, the kind that make people uncomfortable because they actually require thinking. And in today's culture war circus, that's like showing up to a knife fight with a philosophy book. Then there's Coleman Hughes, sharper, more surgical. He doesn't chase applause. He chases truth. While others drown in tribal noise, Coleman is out here building lifeboats of logic. He's not waving the victimhood flag. He's not screaming for attention. He's doing something radical. He's listening. He's asking real questions. And he's calling out the performance for what it is. Because for him, this isn't a shouting match. It's a search for solutions, even if that truth makes the loudest voices squirm. Meanwhile, The View? They're stuck, trapped in the mudslide of outrage porn, throwing tantrums that sound more like a playground meltdown than grown adults tackling actual issues. And that contrast, it's almost comedic. On one side, chaos, table slamming, yelling, high drama energy that could power a theme park. The other, Joe and Coleman. Cool, collected, like two professors debriefing over coffee after class, while the rest of the campus is literally on fire.
So we had 8 minutes to deal with this topic on one of the biggest platforms in the country, and especially an audience that isn't my typical audience. If anything, the Views audience is really who needs to hear my message the most. And Sonny decided to take up a few minutes of that precious 8 minutes and attack me as someone who's been co-opted by the right and someone who's a charlatan. And
Did she use the term charlatan?
she did, and it's funny because I actually didn't notice it in real time. I kind of went in one ear and out.
Forget the noise. Forget the chaos. Forget the screaming. This is about control. Imagine the scene. On one side, The View. The hosts flailing like fish out of water, tossing every buzzword they can grab onto in a desperate attempt to stay relevant. On the other, Joe Rogan and Coleman Hughes. Calm, cool, and collected, sipping their coffee like it's just another day, delivering thoughts so sharp they cut through the nonsense like a hot knife through butter. It's not even close. The contrast is mind-blowing. Joe and Coleman, they're talking truth. They're talking substance. While The View is stuck in a loop of emotional hysteria, where every debate is a personal attack, the panic, the outbursts, it's all surface-level noise with nothing to back it up. Meanwhile, Rogan and Hughes are breaking down complex issues with the precision of laser beams. Their logic is crisp, like the air on a fall day, clear, refreshing, and just too real for comfort. And then, the moment we've all been waiting for. A split screen. On one side, the chaos. On the other, the calm. And it's not a fight. It's a reality check. You can practically hear the tension in the air as The View desperately flails, all while Joe and Coleman sit back, eyes rolling, barely breaking a sweat. It's almost too easy. You know what's wild? Even the YouTube comments couldn't help but agree. The View didn't just get called out, they got destroyed by two guys who didn't even raise their voices. Some called it a masterclass. Others, a mercy killing. But no matter how you slice it, it was brutal. Brutally calm. And here's the kicker. It wasn't just a takedown. It was final. Joe and Coleman didn't need to drag it out. They didn't need to milk it for views. They said their piece. And they moved on. The real question is, can The View recover from this? Or is this the end of their legacy?
That show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show. If the CIA is engineering, Antifa and fucking the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View. Because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of there are so many brilliant women out there. None of them are on The View. None of them have gone near the set of The View. I mean, they have brought in the lowest tier of the, what is it, the Y chromosome?
No,
The X.
Imagine this. The View, the supposed voice of reason in the chaos of daytime TV, completely blindsided. Not by a loud clash of egos, not by some dramatic table-flipping argument, but by two men, calmly sipping coffee, dropping bombs with a level of clarity that left the entire table scrambling. Joe Rogan and Coleman Hughes didn't need to shout, cry, or wear dramatic slogans on their mugs to make a point. All they had to do was speak, and suddenly, the table that's known for its chaos, its shouting, its outrage, was thrown into a storm of defensiveness, denial, and panic. The View? Completely rattled. And what did The View do? Of course, they tried to spin it. Tried to frame themselves as the bold, unapologetic women fighting to be heard, to speak out against the patriarchy. The problem wasn't that they couldn't have a conversation. No, it was the men. Always the men. Especially the ones who dared to think critically and speak in full, coherent sentences. At this point, it's hard not to feel sorry for The View, but not for the reasons they want you to think. It's not because they're victims. Oh no. It's because they've become caricatures of themselves. Every episode is just a remix of the same outrage, the same misunderstandings, and the same desperate cries for relevance. And while they're stuck in that loop, they're critics. They're sitting back, sipping coffee, dismantling everything they stand for with cold, hard logic. The View tried to drag them down with insults. But Joe and Coleman, they didn't need insults. They had something far more dangerous. Coherence. They didn't destroy The View. They exposed them, like pulling back the curtain on The Wizard of Oz, only to reveal a fog machine and some lady named Barbara screaming about patriarchy. And now, The View faces its worst nightmare. Not being canceled, not being attacked, but being ignored. Because once the audience realizes they can get a better, more thoughtful conversation from a calm podcast or two guys in t-shirts, what's left? A table, some mugs, an echo chamber that's grown deafeningly silent. Are you still watching The View for insight? If you are, congratulations, you've chosen chaos. For the rest of us, we'll be over here with Joe, with Coleman, with rational thought, and a decibel level that won't shatter your eardrums. And that's the thing. The View can throw tantrums, but Rogan and Hughes, they throw shade. Calmly.